and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 249th take, live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm your host, Bear Duplessis, as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be with you all tonight. This is going to be a fantastic show, a return of one of my favorite takes of all time. I know it seems like I say that every week, but I really do mean it. One of the most unique conversations we ever had the first time around. We're welcoming back our guests of honor to talk a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper perhaps tonight. But before we get to formal introductions of our guests of honor, let's thank the people that make this show possible. That, of course, is our sponsors, and tonight's show is sponsored by Drew Estate. Drew Estate, during the Thursday, that was just a few days ago, April 27th broadcast of their Freestyle Live special edition, Drew Estate announced an entirely new Freestyle Live event packed to tease the upcoming release of new premium cigar that will be unveiled on their Freestyle Live reveal show on June 8th. So check out these new packs because there's going to be a new cigar released on June 8th, and then they will be revealed from what these Drew Estate Freestyle Live event packs held. So Drew Estate fans and retailers alike will be able to experience the new cigar before its June launch thanks to the Freestyle Live event packs, which are available at all participating retailers nationwide starting just a couple days ago on the 28th. So you can go out and get them today. With an MSRP of $40, Drew Estate's Freestyle Live event presents a tremendous opportunity for fans throughout the U.S. to participate in the new brand's excitement. So a very limited amount of Freestyle Live events were obviously going to be prepared and available. So check them out. 4 of the new premium cigars without any brand identification of any kind, and a Freestyle Live 4 cigar case, and a Freestyle Live torch lighter, and a Freestyle Live cigar rest are available at participating retailers. So check out your Drew Diplomat retailer today. Get a hold of one of these new Freestyle Live event packs and sample the newest and upcoming latest and greatest that will be available and unveiled on June 8th. And welcome, everybody. So without further ado, this is our 249th take. Let's get to introductions right here. Tonight's guest is sponsored by United Cigar. Smoke one today. Start living united. Mr. James Brown of Oveja Negra Brands. James, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for making some time. You were telling me before the show started how you were doing a little bit of travel. Just got back in town not too long ago, so I appreciate you making some time. I know travel can be exhausting, so.
Oh, it's all good, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm a little thrown off though. Your hat isn't black. I just don't know what to do with myself right now. It's kind of throwing me off. Not gonna lie.
You know, I think green and brown are the new black. So. I don't know. You know, you'll see me in a lot of variations these days.
I'm with it. It looks good. It looks good. Is there a brand to it, or is it one of your hats, or what is it?
No, it's undefeated.
Oh, nice. Nice, sweet. I think my eyes were playing tricks on me before the show started. I think you were lighting up your cigar. It looked a lot bigger than it does now. That looks more like your traditional sizes that you usually smoke. I was like, that's got to be the biggest cigar I've ever seen James smoke. And then apparently my eyes were just deceiving me and everything. What'd you light up?
I lit up the new SNR.
Oh, Serpents and Rainbows.
Came out about a month ago. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that will look familiar here in just a second. It would, as has become tradition on this show, James, is I always ask my guests to pick a cigar for me to smoke tonight, and I've got some choices. I think you'll like all of them, so it'll be a little challenging for you, but I know you can pick me out a good one. So I've got the Killer Bee Connecticut, which we'll be talking about later tonight as well. The Santa Muerte. For you.
Nice.
The Porcelain Robusto, which we're going to talk about the cigar as well. And then here it is. It looks like you've got the other size that you released, but I've got the 6x46 Serpents and Rainbows from this year.
Oh, cool. So all on the lighter side.
Mm-hmm. And then I also got one from the event pack that you guys started doing, the Tiger Lily.
Oh, nice.
So,
I don't know. Let's do the Santa Muerte.
All right, fantastic. It has been a while since I've smoked this. So,
have you had the new? So this is the new re-release. Have you had
correct.
This one yet?
No, I have not. This is
okay.
I
cool.
Just picked this up a few days ago, and Yeah, obviously been a while since I've smoked it. I think we talked about this last time. It's not anything intentional, and I don't think it has anything like, I could never really put my finger on something and say like, that doesn't speak to me. But I think I smoke more Black Works than Black Label.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have a better like observation for you than that. Like, oh yeah, this is why, or
Yeah,
this,
I mean, I think they're definitely, a lot of people don't see it, but I mean, they are two very different companies. You
Sure.
know what I mean? In terms of not only branding and things of that nature, but the Vitolas that we do, the flavor profile. So, I mean, Blackworks definitely has a very specific feel, and Black Label has a very specific feel. So, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of people that gravitate towards one or the other, and which is one of the reasons why we have both.
Do you with these different brand identities and everything? I mean, obviously they're intentional, but do you keep them? I guess, do you keep them that separate intentionally? Like, do you ever try not to get too far into each other's lane because you want to kind of keep that separation, or
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, and for me, it's an interesting balance, right? Because it's like when we're working on new product development, things like that. A lot of times, sometimes the cigar just kind of comes out of nowhere, right? And it's like, okay, well, what is this cigar? Is it Black Label? Is it Blackworks? Where does it make sense? Things like that. So it's kind of, I mean, it's cool. It's difficult sometimes, but having to kind of think of both brands simultaneously and how different they are, and to keep things interesting on both sides of the fence there. I mean, a lot goes into it, but I really love it because I feel like the brands are really kind of the two sides of my personality, and so it's fun to work with both.
it's we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a second, and a little bit later and everything, but it and please don't mistake my tone here. I'm not trying to disregard it or downgrade it in any way, because I think they're truly fabulous blends in it. But and please correct me if I'm wrong here, and maybe it's different depending on, I guess, on shops and things like that. But does Emilio kind of struggle because those two are such powerhouses for you? I hope that's coming across right. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Emilio, because you guys done a great job with the brand. But
I think that Emilio is a brand that's coming around, but I think the reason that it has struggled in the past is definitely because it's a brand that's been around for almost 20 years, but it's a brand that just didn't really have an identity. You know what I mean? It's been a lot of different things. It's been controlled by a lot of different people, kind of with different visions and what it's going to be and where it's going to go. And so, it's only been within the last few years where, we've kind of taken control and really wanted to kind of focus it in a certain direction and, put out some new product and bring some new identity to it and, get people kind of seeing what it can be all about. But it's definitely a process. It's one of those things that we keep building at and chipping away at and, putting out new product. And I think that, this last year was a huge thing for Emilio, was the audiophile. And that cigar really just kind of, not for me, but for consumers, it kind of came out of nowhere. Something I've been working on for a while, but it came out of nowhere and really kind of opened people's eyes to something new and different and a little bit bigger and bolder for Emilio. And so, that had a huge response. That's probably one of the first LEs that we've done for Emilio that sold out extremely fast. And people are just, wanting more of it. I mean, I see people online every day trying to track down that cigar. So, we've got a lot more of these interesting projects coming up for Emilio. And, You know, in this industry, man, it just takes a really long time. You know, I mean, even
Mhm.
for us with Black Label, you know, Black Works, I mean, we were a good 5, 6 years into it before, you know, things really get moving and people know the brand and recognize it. So I think Emilio's, it's well on its way. And I think a lot of the stuff that we have coming out is really going to help to kind of keep pushing it along. Um, but it really, for me, it's like, it's just getting it out there, right? Getting
Mhm.
it into people's hands because, you know, the cigars are solid, the price point's killer. You know, it's just getting retailers to get behind it and push it and get it in people's hands.
The Suave Maduro is like absolutely fantastic. Really
Thank you.
enjoyed that. And I really like because we're going to talk about these themes here in a little bit. The music theme that you kind of twisted, you put on, because it's kind of going through this new iteration and you're creating this identity and everything. And I know you've done it in the past. Is the Grimalkin something that we're going to see still, or is it going to have a little more of an updated look to kind of go along with this new identity that you guys are creating?
Yeah, we're going to be re-releasing the Grimalkin seasonal this year, so that's coming out right around October, and we're kind of reworking that, doing some new stuff with it. So that's going to be coming back. Audiophile will be coming back this year as well with some new Vitolas. You know, and then we got some new stuff for 2024 lined up also.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. This was totally unprepared. I wasn't expecting to go full fledged into Emilio here. I actually had a nice icebreaker topic for us. So, but we can actually we'll just switch stuff around. We'll move it right here into the main
Cool.
the major point, which is always brought to you by the people. Yeah, cigar people, the people who know everything about a lifetime of service. Protocol Cigars is more than just pool parties and good times. Well, maybe it is. But behind the fun is a motivation for service, a motivation for giving back. From the original Protocol Blue to the latest release in the Lawman series, Phoebe Cousins' Protocol has always been about honor, passion, and yes, the people. It's what their life's work has been and always will be about. Power of the P, Protocol Cigars. Well, we kind of already kicked things off a little bit by talking about a little bit of your brand here, but I wanted to kind of kick the show off a little bit too, James, because I know I guess sneakerhead is the right term. Maybe not. Maybe prefer something a little bit more formal, like cigar sneaker aficionado or something like that. But I was going to ask if you have you picked up any new drops lately that have just been something you've been looking for a while, or
Yeah, man. I mean, uh, it's like a daily, weekly type deal. So yeah, it's kind of like when people ask me how many actual pairs I have, it's like literally by the month, it's more, few more, few more. So yeah, it's a constant thing.
is it a do you ever trade out or sell some of yours to make room, or is this an accumulating collection that you've done with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I used to. I mean, I used to buy stuff just to buy it because I knew it would go up in value and sell it or trade it or whatever. But I mean, I just don't. I don't have time for that now, and you know, obviously being in Nicaragua, that makes things difficult. So, I mean, really, I'm to the point in my collection now where it's really kind of very focused. You know, it's not about quantity; it's about certain very specific things that I'm looking for. A lot of it is older stuff that I've been trying to track down for a long time. Um, New stuff is kind of hit or miss. There are a few things that I pick up, so it just depends.
Is it just Jordan and Nike, or does it expand to other brands? Or
I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. Like, I love sneakers for sneakers, you know, but kind of my main focus is it does tend to be Nike. I'm a big Nike SB fan. So the bulk of my collection are Nike SB Dunks. But I mean, I have Adidas, I have Yeezys, I have New Balance, I have a lot of designer stuff. I have, you know, pretty much everything, you know.
do you have any old like retro like Reebok the pumps or anything?
I don't. They are starting to kind of re-release those.
Hmm.
I haven't seen them in person, but they are doing a lot of cool stuff with the older Reebok re-releases. which seems pretty interesting because I do remember rocking the pumps. So it would be kind of cool to have those again. But
I'm pretty sure my mom had to like chloroform me to throw out we got a pair of Reebok pumps secondhand that were already beat to shit. I wore them completely out, like didn't care. And my mother was so embarrassed because like sending me to school with just ratty old shoes. But I loved them. I just absolutely loved them. Pretty sure she drugged me one night to throw them away. I don't remember. They were there one day and they weren't there the next. I don't know what happened, but I know they were there. There was almost nothing left of them, but they were so cool. I loved them. I loved them. But yeah, I remember my freshman year of high school. I worked not all summer. I mean, I worked all summer, but it wasn't my entire my summer's paycheck that paid for it. It might have felt like it from my mother, who thought what I dropped on a pair of shoes was ridiculous, but I wanted to buy a pair of Jordans, and that was my gift to myself. I haven't bought a pair in a long time, and I've thought about it, and I've just kind of gone more for function.
I mean, it's interesting, and that's kind of my thing. Is I vividly remember, I mean, I've always been into shoes, even as a kid, and that was my thing. I mean, I remember buying my first pair of Jordans. I remember, kind of that feeling and saving up and kind of begging, my parents and all of that, and just loving those shoes. And so I think it's really cool to, kind of relive those moments, and to be able to own that same shoe today. I don't know, for me, it's just a really cool thing.
That's pretty awesome. When you say designer, like you're talking about like custom made stuff, or?
No, I mean, pretty much kind of the way of the world right now is, streetwear has taken over everything. So if you think of any major design label, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, whatever it is, it's all about streetwear. And, within that is going to be sneakers as well, or a big part of it. So pretty much every major design label is doing sneakers, and whether it's a collab with an existing sneaker company or on their own, it's kind of the norm now. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I haven't gotten into any, I guess when you said designer, I should have gone to like stuff like Louis Vuitton and stuff. Yeah, the only thing designer that I ever bought was my wife wanted a Burberry purse, and I got her one, and it's real. It's not fake. I know that for a fact. So, but that's probably the only foray I've ever done into designer is that one purchase, and it wasn't even for me, obviously. What's like your favorite pair of like designer shoes that you own?
I'm a huge Louis fan, so I like the Louis Vuitton trainers. I mean, I have tons of colors, and I just love that shoe. So nice. That would probably be my favorite for sure.
It's really cool that they're kind of going into like these different forays, right? It's not all about just these, really, I guess, luxurious looks and everything. Like you said, they're going into streetwear and everything. Do you have any insight into why is that? Just because that's just the fad right now. That's the style, and that's what the market's clamoring for.
I mean, I think it's a new customer base, right? Like, I mean, I think the people that have the money and can afford it these days are very different than the people that could 20 years ago. So it's a much younger clientele that's wanting that style. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's interesting to see because it's to watch brands that are very traditional. I think Louis is a great example. It's a very traditional luggage company and is well known for women's purses, are probably one of the most well-known streetwear brands in the market right now. They've completely transitioned their business model 100% in that direction, and their clientele, their customer base is, completely different than I think they would have ever imagined, even 20 years ago.
Not to put too fine a point on this and try to connect things that aren't there, but I mean, would you say that because they are different and they're coming from a different place? It's kind of hard to say this, but would you say that they are the black sheep of streetwear because they're so different and they're looking at it in a different way? Or
No, I mean, I think, if you were to kind of tie this into, something like the cigar model, I think that they're definitely going to be more mainstream just because they're kind of just coming out and doing, what the market demands. Whereas you have like this whole other world of streetwear with these kind of unique, very small companies, very small brands that kind of come out of nowhere and are doing really kind of cool, interesting, small production stuff. So it's kind of, you have the kind of the boutique side of it as well. And that's kind of a really interesting part of streetwear that I really enjoy is a lot of these kind of new up and coming brands that are doing, stuff that people haven't seen before.
just to tie this back into obviously you as the topic of conversation and your brands and everything. I heard a recent interview that you did, and it was a question that I've actually wanted to ask. So I'm going to step on some toes from that interviewer too. But you guys have been doing this a while, and you guys have been so successful at the way that you're doing it. And I know you're just in a way, and I've heard you say you're just kind of getting started and everything. But I mean, and this question was asked to you, and so I know the answer. But I still always wanted to ask it. So for the sake of my audience, I'll go ahead and dive in here. I mean, do you still think of yourself as a black sheep? Does that still tie in with the identity that you've created? Because I mean, again, you've been doing this for a while, and I wouldn't say that you're the outside looking in anymore. You're very much a part of what this industry is becoming and doing amazing things.
I mean, I'll say yes. And for this reason, I mean, we obviously started as like the little brand that could, and kind of, built our way up. And, I think even though we're much bigger today, even bigger than maybe we even expected to be, we haven't changed our process. You know what I mean? We haven't changed anything about what we do. And I think that it's still pretty safe to say that when you go into a cigar shop and pick up a Black Label or Blackworks cigar, that cigar is not going to taste like another cigar that you had, a week ago. So I think we're still very much doing what we do, which I think is, when you look at our process, when if you ever come to our factory and see what we do, it's still very different than what you tend to see in the industry, so I think we still are very much kind of focused on what we do and not so much looking at, kind of the overall market and things like that. We're still just kind of making the cigars that we want to make and, putting out what we want to put out. So yeah, I think it's definitely rings true. And I think that, as we continue to grow and get bigger, that's not going to change. It's kind of, it's our business and what we want to do, and that's what we love about it.
Do you think you guys have found, just to kind of use the word of the evening so far, which is identity, do you think that you've found your identity, your process and everything, or do you think you'll continue to look for ways to kind of buck the trend, kind of staying with that Oveja Negra mantra a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, like, working as a cigar maker for the last 10 years, I mean, I definitely don't feel like you've kind of hit a wall in terms of new ideas and new interesting ways to put tobaccos together and create new and interesting products. So I think definitely, there's a lot more there. And, as we continue to grow and as I continue to grow as a cigar maker, that really just opens my mind to new ideas and new ways of doing things and, stuff that I know I wouldn't have thought of a few years ago. Tobaccos that I look at in very different ways today than I did, when I first started. So I think it's definitely going to be an ongoing kind of long evolution of the brands and where they go.
I think that's what I've always loved about you, James, is that when you put, your mind to something, and when you've kind of gone after certain things, you in a lot of ways, it ends up being different than everything else, but it's not different for different sake, if that makes sense. It's like it's very much a part of your creative process. Like I remember talking to you about creating the music theme around Emilio, and how Blackworks was more of your I'm gonna botch this, but basically like your almost your toy factory a little bit, where you could just go off and do some really super creative things with a little bit more free license and everything within your own process that you've created. And but it all kind of comes back to this when you, like you said a minute ago, when you smoke a Black Label or Blackworks or Emilio and go into any humidor, it's not going to be like any other experience. And I think that's a very fair and accurate statement. And I think that's also pretty darn exciting for anyone who wants to try something that doesn't really taste like anything else. Like we talk about companies that have, I'm babbling here for a second, I apologize. We talk about companies who have like a signature.
Right.
And I don't think there's a signature flavor in your cigars, but I think there's a signature in their uniqueness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, obviously when you look at Black Label, you look at Blackworks in terms of the portfolios themselves. We have a very wide range of styles, profiles, strengths, all of that. But I do think overall there's more so a signature to Oveja Negra, as the factory. I think that when you smoke one of our cigars, no matter what line it is from, either brand, it definitely kind of says to you that it's an Oveja Negra cigar. So, and that's kind of what we strive for.
Apologies, some smoke went down the wrong way. No, I definitely agree with that. I really enjoyed kind of making my way through your portfolio, and you made note of something specific that I wanted to hop into here. I want to come back to something else here in just a second, but you noted that like the cigar choices that I gave you tonight were of the lighter variety, and that's certainly the case. I've loved the deeper, darker, more fuller stuff that you've made. Really, really, really enjoyed it. But I've also really come to love a lot of these lighter things these lighter varieties that you've made as well. Specifically, the Rave for Dissident that you did was my #1 cigar of the year a couple years ago. And I mean, that's an incredible smoke. Really have really enjoyed the Killer Bee Connecticut. I know you guys just made that more regular production. And then the Porcelain too. This has been smoking incredible. And I think, I mean, when you first started, Connecticut Shade wasn't something that you really dabbled in too much. Am I mistaken there?
Not at all. Yeah. So, and honestly, I love to hear you say that about, the products that you have with you, because it's important for people to realize that, we're not a one-trick pony. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about the big, bold, dark. We do, focus on other profiles, other strengths, and do them very, very well. And that, for me, working on those types of cigars is actually what I really enjoy the most, because it is a lot more difficult for me to kind of come up with something really unique and interesting that fits into those profiles. So it's a lot of fun to work on those, and we kind of started playing with some Connecticut's during the color project that we used to do for Cigar Federation. We had the Tiger Kitty and a couple other things. And so that kind of got me interested, and I wanted to do a Connecticut for Black Label, but it had to be the right Connecticut. You know what I mean? It had to be a Connecticut for Black Label smokers. And it took a long time, and, the Porcelain was a result of that time and effort. And it was probably like, for me, my most nervous I've ever been putting out a cigar, just because I literally just didn't know what our hardcore, Black Label fan base, how they were going to respond to it,
Okay.
And so the interesting thing is, you fast forward from that point to today, where porcelain is our number one selling SKU, which is kind of crazy. And so, yeah, you just never know, man.
It's really crazy that even in today's age, as people have kind of gone into these other forays, and I remember smoking. So when I started smoking, it was just at this was almost 20 years ago now, but it was just right on the beginnings of Ligero, the stronger the better. Like that was the trend back then, that was what it was all about, and but even then, the Connecticut Shade has always been king for almost everybody. It's just it's the cigar that is reliable, and if it's made incredibly well, you've got a smoker for it. You just do. The name, I mean, I'm assuming the color of the leaf has something to do with it. What made you so interested to dive back and peel back the layers of your creative side here? Where did porcelain come from?
Actually, it was the leaf, because what I really love about Connecticut Shade is that, when you get really good quality Connecticut Shade, it has almost this kind of really nice matte finish to it, and what I love about it is that once you light it up and you start smoking it, then all those beautiful oils kind of come to the surface. And it kind of reminded me of porcelain, as kind of the texture of the leaf and looking at it, kind of that nice kind of matte, smooth finish. And so that's just kind of where it came from.
I mean, it's gorgeous, and I do like the white on it too. You'd think that might kind of be a muted look, but again, the design works really well on it, and it kind of gives it a kind of a regalness to it almost, and it's really well done. The pigtail cap too. I've always been a fan of the way that the accents that you do on particular cigars, whether that be like open foot, closed foot, pigtail caps, the on the killer bees and the green hornets, the work that you do with the wrapper leaves. Yeah. I think, for everything that you do, I think it really works in a kind of a beautiful way. I think it really kind of is a cherry on top, if you will. Kind of, it just says like, hey, to our point earlier, like we may make these deep, dark, really hearty smokes, but they're also beautiful as well. They can be elegant. And I think that's, it's a really nice contrast that you put on it that works really well for what you guys do. I've always really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, to me, a cigar, it's a beautiful thing, right? Like, and the time and effort that goes into making it, why not make it look as good as it can? You know what I mean? That's why we triple cap everything. We always try to do something kind of interesting and unique, whether it's a rabito or a pigtail or, like you said, the closed foots. So yeah, that's just kind of the thing, is like, not only from a artisanal perspective of cigars, to me, should be beautiful, but it's also one of those things where, from a business standpoint, when you're looking at something on the shelf, like it needs to have curb appeal. You know what I mean? Like it's got to look good, especially to a new customer. So it's definitely one of our main focuses. Is a lot goes into our cosmetic quality control.
I remember when the last time I had you on, we talked about that's when Swarm had just come out, and just absolute rave reviews, just critical acclaim across the board for that cigar. And that was your first first-ish foray into Cameroon wrapper, and now we're sitting here talking about Connecticut, which you've done for a number of years now in various ways and everything. But is there, are you constantly looking for things to challenge yourself? Like, can I make a cigar with this, or can I blend with that, or is it? Oh, you're nodding. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always curious about anything, any tobacco that's out there, I want to try. Certain things don't necessarily work in kind of what we do day to day. But there are, a lot of new variations of things that I'm curious about. I always want to try it. I always want to work with something new. So yeah, definitely always down to do different things.
I was actually thinking about this today. I was chatting with a group of friends about another cigar brand and another cigar with different type of tobacco, and it gave me pause to think about and ask you about it tonight. And that was with tobacco or cigars that are, have a influence of Peruvian tobacco or Colombian. Those two tobaccos have they have very nice floral essences to them and aromas, very citrus forward flavor components, and they can be overpowering, which is why people don't like to use them in some cases, or when they do, those are the flavors that come forward the power. You were nodding. Have you dabbled with that? Is it kind of?
I have, yeah. I mean, it's it's funny you say that, because the Peruvian is one of the tobaccos that I really like. But it is a tobacco that I've played with, and I haven't kind of figured out where it fits into what we do. But I think at some point there will be some variation of that used in one of our products.
I want to go on record and say I would love to smoke a cigar that James Brown made with Peruvian tobacco. I would love to see your take on that. So, at least you got one person interested, if that means anything. Kind of going on to this though, like, does it ever get frustrating for you though? Like when you're, like you said, like, hey, this is a tobacco I really love, but you just haven't found the place for it. Does it ever get frustrating when you're trying to do something with something and it just doesn't work?
Not really. I mean, I don't try to. I mean, things can always work. It's just a matter of figuring it out, right? You just have to dedicate kind of the time and effort to working with it enough to figure out what makes sense, and I think that the difficult thing is that, I want to make sure that, the cigars that we put out, for our different brands, they have to make sense, right? We can't just come out of left field with something absolutely, completely, out of the box, out of the wheelhouse for what the brands kind of are. So it's kind of, for me, the difficult part is working it into something that makes sense for what we do. So, and that's sometimes takes a lot of time. A lot of these products we put out, especially the limited releases, these are things that I work on for sometimes years before they come out, so it's a long process. It's a long game, but it's also one of those things where, what can become a little bit frustrating I think from any manufacturer standpoint is, it's like, for us specifically, we have this list of limiteds that have kind of, they come out every year, every other year, whatever the rotation is. And people love them, and that's awesome. And they have this expectation that, they're going to be back. But they also have this expectation that there's going to be a bunch of new stuff too, so that balance, I think, is probably one of the more difficult ones that we face, where it's kind of tough to say, like, okay, everybody loves morphine, everybody loves Bishop, but what about this new stuff? We also want to work on these new projects and get those projects out and going. So that's the tough part is, 12 months in a year is really a super short timeline when it comes to putting out a limited release product for us.
You're teaming me up perfectly for another segment to talk about something with your limiteds, but I want to put a pin in it because I don't want to overshadow something that I think, is a little bit gotten a little bit under the radar, for probably everybody except for you, because you obviously know it's 10 years, right? This is 10 years of Black Label. That's a huge milestone. I know that the cliche question is always like, what's changed the most? I think a lot of things have changed. What's changed the least in 10 years?
Interestingly enough, we're 10 years into this, and it's still always kind of interesting to me that there's still just a lot of people, a lot of retailers that have still like never heard of us. Which is kind of like, it kind of shows you like the expanse of this industry. You know what I mean? Like how many retailers are actually out there, and and how much like this segment of the industry in terms of brands our size and things like that are still kind of working to reach people, and so I think that's changed. That's one thing that hasn't changed, is the grind and the hustle. It doesn't go away. You know what I mean? Like we still have to be grinding, have to be hustling no matter what. It doesn't stop. It's either myself on the road or Derek, our national sales manager, on the road. But somebody's always out there still grinding, even 10 years in. You got to be.
It's I think it's a small industry, right? It's a small world. Like a lot of people know other people, but then like you said, there's always some retailer or customers. So brief departure here. I had Abe Tababna on before, a few weeks before the Great Smoke. And he was like, yeah, I'm always looking to try stuff. He's like, yeah, if you ever have any brand suggestions. And I was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, let's talk after the show. And I don't think he'll mind saying me this now, because it was funny. I was like, Abe, I don't know. And I confess, it had been a few weeks since I'd looked, I guess, at his big list of brands. I was like, Abe, I don't know how you don't carry James's stuff. Like, how do you not have Oveja Negra? And he's like, what, you mean the Green Hornet, Killer Bee? He's like, yeah, I brought that in just a few weeks ago. I was like, all right, stand corrected. There we go. Fantastic. We're great choice. Good job. Well done.
Yeah.
But that's huge for you guys. I mean, he's a huge, obviously retailer in Florida, and I mean his reach goes well beyond that too. And that's a great opportunity for you guys. So that's
absolutely. Yeah.
So to that point about like small brands and stuff, like or just like how people don't know everything, we were actually standing in line at the Great Smoke talking about cigars, and there were a couple people in line behind us. We were in front of the Tatuaje and My Father booths, and these two people had never heard of My Father or Tatuaje. So it's crazy how many, like you said, doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, like you said, the grind and the hustle. I mean, even for Pete, who's been doing this for twice as long as you have, which is crazy. Right. Just nuts. Well, do you have anything? I mean, is there anything special planned for this milestone? I mean, to commemorate it, or?
Yeah, we actually have a few cool things for Black Label. So we are releasing a 10-year anniversary cigar called the Black Madonna, or the Madonna Negra. That's going to be coming out in June. So I'm very excited about that. It's our first Connecticut broadleaf wrapped cigar.
Oh, wow.
So we've used Connecticut broadleaf in different variations and fillers and things like that. But so this is our first Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, coming in 3 vitolas. And yeah, so we're super stoked about that. I would say it's a very different cigar for Black Label in a good way. So it's definitely unique, definitely interesting. And I think people are really going to dig it. Then we have at PCA this year, we're going to be launching 5x50 Robustos in all of the Black Label core line. So we're going to be adding those up, to the core.
I'm down.
And then to kind of close out the year, we're doing a really cool project called the Black Album, which is going to kind of be an anthology of all the limited releases we've done over the last 10 years for Black Label. So it's going to have a representation of each one of those cigars in kind of this, album size box.
Oh, that's cool.
Some really cool artwork and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be some cool stuff coming for sure.
So for the Madonna Negra, is this going to be a limited release, or is this going to be an ongoing production?
This is probably going to be the first cigar that we've done that will be a one and done. All of the rest of our limiteds are kind of annual. They come back. I can't say that the Madonna will come back. Probably not. Just because of what it is and what we had to do to make it in terms of the aging of the wrapper, things like that. So yeah, it's probably going to be our first cigar that's kind of a celebratory cigar, and that'll be that. But it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be in 3 vitolas. We're doing something really cool with the box that you guys will see when the press release comes out. And it's the first time we're doing 50 dress boxes that are going to be very, very cool. Nice. Kind of a collector's type thing. And then that box is actually going to be all 3 vitolas in one. So some cool stuff going on with that.
Neat. Kind of like a little homage to the Hive, kind of, that kind of collection of sorts.
Yeah, so it's going to be, kind of cool, larger size. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool.
I still have 2 of those that I have not cracked open. I've bought 3 of them. One I smoked through, and the other 2 I've got.
Gotta burn them up, man.
I know. Everyone always tells me that. Like when I tell them I have really cool stuff. Manufacturers, at least, will always tell me that. God, you smoke through that stuff. I thought about cracking one open tonight, but these the selection that I put before you were just kind of speaking to me today. So with this one and done, like you said, it's the first time you've done it, and it's because of the tobaccos and the aging and everything. So I take it by that it's genuine Connecticut broadleaf, American broadleaf, right? It's not like we've seen a lot of different variations of it, like Nicaraguan grown and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. So, but man, that stuff's hard to get a hold of. When you said aging, I'm sure you've been aging it for a while.
We have, yeah, we've been aging it for a long time, and then we've actually, this is the first cigar that we've produced and then actually held and aged in our aging room for. By the time it releases, it'll be about a year that we've aged it as well. So, yeah, a lot of time and effort. It just into the actual production side of it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I wanted to take a quick break here for one of our fun segments tonight here, James. We've been doing something new. I know it's been a while since you've been on the show, where we had a couple of segments before. I think all of our segments, for the most part, will be new to you, with the exception of the last one. This one is sponsored by United Cigar. We're going to go into a little bit of history here, James. Don't worry, it's multiple choice. It's questions, multiple choice. Don't worry. But it is about American presidents. So it is sponsored by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Brian Delero, Garofalo, Firecracker, the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Smoke one today and start living united. When Oliver Naveau of United and I got together on this scene, he was like, yeah, we should do a presidential trivia since you love presidents so much. And I was like, absolutely, let's do it. It's just kind of break up the the monotony of an interview and a little bit, kind of have a little fun. And so what I've been doing is just trying to take my guests and connect them somehow to presidents. And I have an interesting observation about my choice tonight. There's an obvious one, which is that you share the name, James Madison, James Brown. You share the same first name and everything. He's the subject tonight. But here's your question, and then I'll go into my observations about the former president, James Madison. So other than, and I'm using my quote finger, other than treason, what other crime did James Madison commit in his lifetime, and which famous American was with him when he committed it? Was it A, was he arrested for writing lewd and lascivious comments in newspapers along with Alexander Hamilton? Was he B, cited for public intoxication with James Monroe? C, arrested for illegal carriage riding with Thomas Jefferson? Or D, was he accused by Aaron Burr of plagiarism when writing the Bill of Rights and U.S. Constitution?
I'm going to just go with A.
Arrested for writing lewd and lascivious comments in
Sure.
newspapers. He did write with Alexander Hamilton and John Jay, the Federalist Papers, and for some they probably were probably considered pretty controversial at the time, obviously, because we were trying to ratify the Constitution. But no, that's not it. He was actually arrested for illegal carriage riding with Thomas Jefferson. You're going to get a kick out of this. He was arrested because they were carriage riding on a Sunday, and where they happened to be, riding in carriages on Sundays was actually illegal. So, it's not the same as riding a Land Rover through a military coup like you did, but it's
Yeah.
it's one of those funny stories about it. The other comparison that I had for James Madison and you, James, is that I don't think you're particularly short. He was the shortest president in our history. But I think from before I had the opportunity of meeting you, you seemed like for me, like this very imposing person. I don't know why. You seemed, I don't know what it was, but it seemed very imposing, very almost kind of intimidating. And I don't know what it was. Obviously, all I had to go on was like pictures and, that was pretty much it. So I don't know what it really was and everything. And, I mean, that's what I love about this industry. There's like so many people that are approachable, but like, I remember the first time I met you at IPCPR, now PCA trade show a few years ago, and you actually handed me a Tiger Lily. Or actually not a Tiger Lily, you handed me a Neon Tiger, excuse me. And we just had a very brief, nice, wonderful conversation. And I was like, man, he's nothing like I pictured at all. And not that my previous impression was bad, and not that the resulting impression was bad either. It's just like one of those things that was just kind of opposites and everything. I think that my comparison that I'm drawing with James Madison was that, like he was a very powerful force, and for a very small statured man, he barely weighed 100 pounds. Shortest president in our history, yet wrote the greatest document in our nation's history and stuff, and obviously curbed a lot of things that, and created a lot of things that happened for our government. So, again, connecting the dots here, he was a rebel, and so are you. And, you bucked the status quo and are creating this new, you're pioneering this own trail for you with Oveja Negra. So I don't know. That's my connection with James Madison. That's what I was putting together.
Man, that's cool.
So I'm sure you enjoyed this nice foray back into social studies since you going back to school.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
But that was our presidential trivia segment, brought to you by United Cigars, featuring La Giana Havana, distributors of Jose Dominguez, Bandolero, Garofalo, Firecracker, the highly acclaimed Atabey, Byron, and now Alfonso lines from Selected Tobacco. Pay close attention, y'all, because we'll be doing starting on Flag Day in the middle of June, we'll be doing a 20 days of United from Flag Day until our nation's Independence Day, July 4th, is exactly 20 days. And we will be smoking a United cigar each day to celebrate 20 days of freedom. So pay attention to that. It's coming down the pike. We'll have more details for our audience as that draws closer. So thanks, James. I really appreciate your participation in that. What's the kind of, just to go back here a little bit to what we were talking about before with like what you guys have done with like limited releases and stuff. The limited release that I really enjoyed last year, in fact, it made my honorable mention list for my top 10, because my top 10 can't be a limited cigar. So I have like an honorable mention list, cigars of note that are limited editions. It was one of the best cigars that I smoked last year, and I really, really enjoyed it. was the Intergalactic. And I thought that blend was absolutely sensational in both sizes that you released and everything. And I was trying to remember this, and I apologize that I couldn't recall. Is that the first time that you've done that release? Because I know you bring, like you said, you bring some back. Okay.
So yeah, that was the first time for the Intergalactic, and it was, you know, that was a cigar as well where I was kind of like, you know, does this really make sense for Blackworks? And you know, I sat on that blend and that idea for a while, and just every time I kept coming back to it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, it does. I dig it. I'm into it. I get it. I was a little worried that some people might not get it, but I think overall I was really happy with the feedback from it, because it is a very different cigar for us. But I think, you know, in a very good way. And I think it's a very, very, one of the most unique cigars I think we've put out in terms of the profile that it has. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you really liked it.
Oh, it's fabulous. I'll tell you the story about how it saved my week once. And I'll tell you, I know you don't venture outside of your own stuff very often or at all, but I obviously smoke quite a bit outside of your stuff, even though I enjoy it immensely. And every so often I'll go on and I'm sure this happens in the factory too, when you're like sampling tobaccos and like they're just not ready and they're not right. And so you go like I call it a bad run, where it's just like cigar after cigar is just not like, one's plugged, this doesn't taste good, I'm trying something new and that doesn't work. And I had a really bad run throughout a week. I mean, I smoked probably, I want to say 12, 15 cigars that week, and just none of them tasted good. just none of them hit. And I was sitting with my wife's uncle on my patio, and I lit up a cigar, and it just, I mean, I got 3 or 4 puffs into it. I was like, I'm done with this shit. And I went back inside and I grabbed the Intergalactic, and it was only my second one. And I was like, I know this will be fine. And I lit it up, and I loved that cigar before. I loved it on my first try, but I think a combination with the fact that it was such a bad run of stuff and how good that cigar is, it just like was the ultimate hit the spot moment for me. It was fantastic. It just smoked so good, and that blend just really, really is balanced, and I really enjoyed that cigar. You just did it. You hit a home run as far as I'm concerned. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
All right,
that cigar is, it's kind of funny story about that cigar, because you know, I was really into it. And, you know, some of the other people in the company were kind of just like, yeah, I don't get it. Like, you know, are you sure? Like, this is it? This is the cigar? Like, yeah.
They didn't get
awesome.
The blend, or like the branding?
Yeah, it was just like,
okay.
No, they were just kind of like, yeah, it's okay. I was like, all right, whatever. So, yeah, it's just kind of,
okay.
But yeah, I really liked it. So I was glad to see that people responded positively towards it.
Yeah,
because it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting. Like, you know, I mean, as I think any kind of creator, anything you put out, whether you know, whatever you're making yourself, and you put your kind of yourself into it, and you put it out there for other people, you know, it's always very kind of intimidating and kind of a nail biting thing when it comes out, you know. So any new cigar for me, I'm always kind of, you know, I have a bit of a stress level just to see the reaction to it. So yeah, I was happy that everybody dug it.
So not like the nervousness of when the porcelain came out, not that level, or
not that level. No, not that level, but that was probably the worst.
That's so bizarre to me. I feel like it plays really well into your portfolio and like the staple a little bit. I mein, it's different. Don't get me wrong. It's a completely different tasting blend, but yeah, I thought it was just absolutely sensational. So I mean, are there plans to bring that black maybe in later years, or like kind of like you've done with other stuff, or what do you think?
The Intergalactic?
Yes.
Yeah, the Intergalactic's definitely coming back, and it's probably going to come back in its original form, and also a variation of the Intergalactic as well. So probably like 2024, we may bring back the original, and then 2025 a different tweak on it.
We were talking earlier, and I said you kind of were teeing me up for this grouping of questions here and early, but I wanted to go back to your anniversary first. But this does play into like the fact that you've I think that what we see a lot in the industry, James, and I'm sure you'll probably agree. I think that there are a lot of brands and companies that are out of balance. Like they have too many core brands, and there's not enough of these kind of like more limited releases where they can be a little bit more fun and kind of do like sell, milestone cigars or whatever whatever they may be. And then there's cigars companies that do way too many limiteds, and it seems like that's all they do. And it's it's almost like you're trying to catch them at the right time and things like that. But I feel like you've kind of, if you'll permit me, I feel like you've kind of mastered the balance, because I think you've got a fantastic selection of core that's really kind of been your workhorse over the last 10 years. And then you have a lot of fun and a lot of loyalty and excitement around these limited releases that you do. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely works for us. And I think one of our biggest differences in terms of the way that we view our business is, none of us involved in our company had any history in the cigar business. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't own a cigar shop. I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't know. So we kind of came into it, kind of a blank slate and no kind of preconceived notions of what we should do or how we should do it. We just kind of did what seemed to make sense for us. And, kind of, I wanted to view it from a consumer standpoint as well. And, that kind of thing was, I was very adamant with our limiteds early on that, like I just, the amount of effort that goes into, not only blending a new cigar, but the marketing behind it, the branding, the promotion of it, like there's no reason that these should just like be gone. You know what I mean? Like they have to come back. I want people to be excited for these. If they're excited for it once, they're going to be ready for it again. And they're great cigars. I mean, there's no reason for them to go away. So that was just kind of early on. We decided that's the route we were going to go, and I think it's worked out really well.
Would you say that, like, I was trying to think about this the other day when I was kind of doing some preparation for tonight, and I mean, would you say that the Bishops has got to be the most successful limited you guys do? Would it be Morphine maybe, because it's been around a little? Morphine's been around a little bit longer, I feel like.
A little bit longer, a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, those two for sure are kind of like the staples, and that's the cool thing too, is that we see that, I mean, Morphine first came out in 2014. So it's, going on 9 years with Morphine. But people still get as excited about it today as they did back then. And the same story with the Bishop, so it's awesome to see that, even though these cigars have been around, the excitement is still there, and more and more people keep latching onto them and falling in love with them, which is awesome to see.
What do you attribute that to? Do you think it is your fan base? I mean, I think the cigar quality stands on its own. So
yeah, I mean, I think we're just super fortunate, and I'm always incredibly humbled by the customers that we have. I mean, it's just like, it's so awesome for me to see, the way people not only support the brand, but just, I love it when they find like their cigar, you know what I mean? And that's like the coolest moment for me as a cigar maker, is when somebody finds a product that we make that they absolutely fall in love with, and that's their thing. Because I know that that's like such a huge, as a cigar smoker myself, I know that's such a huge like positive thing in somebody's life. You know what I mean? Like when you find
Mhm.
like either the brand or the cigar that kind of gives you everything you want and makes you happy. So that's always awesome. And to see these guys that support us the way that they do, and want to come to Nicaragua and go to the factory, like that's just always so like humbling to me and awesome to see. And I would say that we just have like the best group of people that are out there supporting what we do.
The funny story about my relationship with the Bishop's Blend, this last release that you did was the very first Bishop's Blend that I ever purchased. Not the first one that I smoked, but the first one I ever purchased. I can't tell you what it was. It was like one of those mysterious things. Like I was always gifted one or a couple from various people, like not the same person. It was kind of like the original theory about a postage stamp. Like one materializes when you need it. But it just if you need a postage stamp, you find it, or it's easy to get. Or something like that. But I recall I've smoked, I want to say nearly all of your Bishop's blends, but I never actually paid for one until this last one, which I made note of it because I was like I can actually I'm gonna buy more, and then I thought to myself, I'm like, why have I never bought this in the past? And it was because someone always gifted me some, or one or two, or whatever it was. So it was one of those funny stories about it. When you first started doing the Bishops, I mean, was that? I mean, I don't think anyone ever creates something to be mediocre. But I mean, did you have the foresight to say like this is going to be a pillar of what we're trying to do here?
I mean, I think so. Yeah. I mean, like for me personally, yes, because, the Bishop, when it first came out in 2016, it was a cigar that I had been working on for like maybe a little over 2 years, I think. So, and I always tell people that it's a special cigar for me because it's a cigar that I couldn't have made any earlier. It's kind of like a culmination of kind of what I had learned about working with tobaccos up until that point. And it took me a long time, like I said, to where I thought it was perfect, and I was super excited about it. And I think it definitely had more of a response than I anticipated. But I think that cigar in 2016 is really kind of what changed the brand. It definitely steered the brand in a different direction in terms of like the hype and being super sought after. And it was kind of the first cigar that really got mass amounts of attention and brought a lot of attention our way. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I recall a lot of people talking about it back in 2016, and that's when the first person gifted me one. I smoked it, and I was wow, this is fantastic. So I can see how it kind of, like you said, it kind of garnered that attention, grabbed people, and kind of steered them towards what you guys were doing. You mentioned a moment ago, and I know that's something that you always took pride in and loved doing, and you recently welcomed people back to a factory tour for the first time in 3 years, right?
Yeah, first time since COVID. So yeah,
When was the
it's
last
been
one?
a
Was
little
it like
while.
2019 right before, or 2020 right before, or was it 2019 was the last one?
2019, and it was so it was 2019, and it was literally like our last group. People's flights were getting canceled, and everybody was worried about getting home. Thankfully, they were all able to get back, but yeah, it was like right at that moment.
What's why are they so special to you? The factory tours.
I know that one thing for me is like I love that people are into not only cigars but our cigars enough to want to know the whole story. You know what I mean? They want to know where it comes from, why we do this, why we do that. See the actual people that are behind it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm out there, Angela's out there, like you see us, but I mean, we're not the ones that are, sitting at the table every day, creating these things. So, it just feels, it's like bringing someone into your home, and I think that's a really cool thing that, people want to know and they want to experience it. And, they want to know what Nicaragua's all about and what it's like. And, I just find that really cool, and it means a lot to me that I know that, it's not a cheap thing to do, and that people take this time out of their life and spend this amount of money to experience that. It's a really nice thing to see.
We talked a lot about your story the last time you were on, James, and I thought about this with your 10th anniversary and everything. Nicaragua's got to be the longest you've been in one place since your youth, right? I mean,
it is, yeah, for sure.
Is it the longest time period, like even going like for your entire life, or?
No, I mean, I basically grew up in Austin and was there until, I finished with college. But yeah, I mean, in terms of in the last 20 plus years, yeah, I mean, we've kind of always just been one place or another, developing businesses, selling businesses, moving on to something else. So, yeah, it's been quite a long stretch for us here, which is kind of cool because, it not only did, not only did we come here because we needed to be here. We came because we really love Nicaragua, and it's cool that it has turned into the place where we feel like, we are going to put down roots, and kind of this is it for us. This is where we're going to be. I mean, because in reality, we could live somewhere else, and tons of people own factories and are not in Nicaragua, and
sure.
Not that I think that's the best way to run a factory, but it could be done. We love it here, so it's where we want to be.
It's home, to your point.
Yeah,
yeah, everything about it. You just took a little bit of a segue off of the tours. I wanted to. I mean, do you guys have any more planned this year, or is it not again till next year? What's the plan?
Yeah, not again until next year. I mean, we have a very short window because we want to, we want people to experience going to the farms, seeing the curing barns, things like that. So, the growing season for tobacco here is very short. It's basically January through end of April, roughly, sometimes middle of April. So, yeah, we're going to start back up with, we usually do like 3 or 4 a year. So we have those starting again in January.
How many did you just do one this year? Or did you do a couple more?
No, we actually did 4 this year.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we did 3 out of the US, and then we had a group from Germany with our distributor that came.
I'm sure there were a lot of new people. Were there any repeats? Any people who came back?
There's actually a lot of repeats. Yeah, so it's kind of funny. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to have to kind of find this balance now between people that want to come back versus new people. So yeah, we may end up doing like kind of trips geared towards new people, and then maybe a trip geared towards, returning people, which is awesome to see. I mean, we've had people come, 3, even 4 times, which is really cool.
That's, like you said, that's got to be pretty humbling, just to have people not only just come, but then want to come multiple times to experience. Have you?
Yeah, definitely.
Have you changed it up at all? Like, I'm sure you have over the years.
A little bit. We've kind of tweaked it here and there. I think a cool thing that we're doing now is we're doing one night where we do an actual like catered dinner in the factory. Because we have a really, I don't know, you've probably seen it online, but we have a really awesome lounge space in the factory. And so that's a really, I don't know, to me, that's like the perfect environment just because it speaks to the brands and what we do. And so it's really cool to do like the nice, dinner there with candles and all that, and just creates a really cool vibe.
Outside of you mentioned a moment ago, I want to dive back into fact how Nicaragua has become home for you and Angela and your son, for the last decade plus. Um, Outside of cigars and everything, what's your favorite part of Nicaragua? What do you love about it so much?
It's just the overall vibe. It's super laid back. We've lived in a lot of places in Latin America, and unfortunately in those places they were the kind of places where you're basically living behind a wall, and you got razor wire, and you got cameras, and you got security, and all this stuff. And like, so when we came to Nicaragua, I mean, it was just kind of like this huge like exhale of this loss of stress in terms of those types of situations. Like, Nicaragua is just such a laid back, safe place, and the people are just so genuinely like friendly and warm and welcoming. And so it's just got that really good vibe to it. And I mean, for us, like, raising our son here, I mean, we couldn't have picked a better place, honestly. Like, I mean, it's just to see him grow up here and kind of experience that is just awesome. And that's one thing that we really didn't anticipate, but it worked out to be just perfect.
I imagine your son is, just because he's had to be. Are like all three of you fluent in Spanish?
Yeah.
I love asking this question. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say he more so than us, just because he grew up in it. I mean, his first, kindergarten through 7th grade was all Spanish. All of his friends only spoke Spanish, so he's 100% fluent.
Does he speak any other languages?
No, he wants to learn French. He's been kind of dabbling in that. But yeah, it's just it's kind of funny because he kind of considers Spanish his first language.
Sure.
Like, he says it's easier for him to read, write, all that stuff in Spanish. He said that he dreams in Spanish.
That's where I was going to go. Yeah, with multiple.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool to see that. And the cool thing is, for me, is like, Angela and I, we speak Spanish, but we speak kind of regular Spanish. Whereas when Parker speaks, he speaks like a Nicaraguan. He knows all the slang, all the term. So it's cool to see that he speaks like a local.
Yeah, he's immersed. Yeah, that's really that is cool. Do you so around the house? I mean, do you guys speak English to each other? Do you speak Spanish to each other? Or?
We speak English. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but factory is all Spanish. Anything we do is all Spanish. Parker, with his group of friends now that he's in an international school, he has kind of a mix of kids from all over, but kind of his core group of friends, even though they are like American or Canadian or whatever, most of them grew up here as well, and they all just speak Spanish to each other. That's kind of their go-to.
Yeah, I know, I had the Coburns on earlier this year, and we talked about San Juan del Sur, and, I know Skip lives there too, and there might be other folks in the industry that live nearby as well, but I think you three are the only people that I know of for a fact. But I was going to ask about the community. Is it a lot of expat or from United States? You mentioned Canada too. Like, any other countries that you know of your neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of have people from all over. I mean, there's a lot of Europeans, a lot of Canadians, Americans, obviously. We have people from Australia, South Africa. I mean, it's kind of one of those places where people just kind of end up from all over.
I mean, the views looks breathtaking, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. So, I mean, how far is it from your factory?
It's about 4.5 hours.
Okay. So we go ahead.
It's fine. We basically commute up once a week, stay a couple days, and then come back.
Okay.
And then depending on what's going on at the factory, like sometimes it's stuff I need to deal with, sometimes Angela needs to deal with. So we kind of rotate off, 1 week her, 1 week me, whatever the case. So.
What has that? I know it's been home for a while. Did you guys live in Esteli for a few years before you all moved out there, or have you always had this?
We
this
did,
commute?
yeah.
Okay.
No, we lived in Esteli for 5 years. Yeah. So, which, anybody that's been to Esteli, like it's a great place to visit, but living there can be a little bit, monotonous to say the least. So it's kind of, it's just one of those places. I mean, it's a small Nicaraguan blue collar factory town. There's only so many restaurants to go to and not much else going on. So yeah, it was good because, during that time we really needed to be immersed in the business, immersed in the factory, getting it to the point that it needed to be. So, during that time we didn't really have any distractions. So it was really good for that. But then, Park, kind of the way the school system was set up there, we needed to find something different for Parker as he got older. And so San Juan was kind of the ideal fit, just because of the international school. And so it just kind of made sense.
Terrific. Has he talked to you and Angela about any plans? Like what's like, I always ask this with people. I always ask about the next generation. Has he expressed any interest in the cigar industry, or is he looking to do something completely different? Or
I think at this point he's like any other 16-year-old. He really doesn't have any idea what he wants to do. But he has, like, in the last couple of years, definitely shown a lot more interest in like what we do. Kind of curious about the cigar business, what we do, where we kind of fit in the cigar industry, things like that. So he's definitely kind of starting to ask a lot more questions. And so yeah, I think it's kind of cool to see. Obviously everybody hopes that there could be something there, but we'll see what happens.
it's obviously too young now. Have you and Angela ever talked with him about coming to a trade show and seeing what the industry in a larger setting looks like? Or
Yeah, actually we, at the last Intertabac, the rules there are definitely much more lax towards age restrictions and things like that. And we were actually able to bring him on the trade show floor at Intertabac, which was kind of cool in Germany.
Nice.
So he kind of got to see and feel the whole kind of energy of everything, which was cool.
Nice. I wanted to go back into the portfolio a little bit before I kind of moved on to a couple more fun segments to conclude our evening, James. You mentioned about how porcelain's become your number one SKU, and before that, if I'm not mistaken, it was Killer B was the number one right before you took porcelain.
Yeah, so
mainstream.
Yeah, Killer Bee's still up there, but that's, we kind of treat both brands separately. So for Black Works, Killer Bee's the number one seller, and then for Black Label, it's porcelain.
We talked about the Connecticut shade and how it's king in a lot of ways. But something that is very unusual about the fact that Killer Bee it does so well for you is it's not one of the go-to sizes. You hear about Gordo, you hear about Robusto, Toro is king,
Right.
And it's, couldn't be, other than Robusto, it couldn't be further from any of those, right?
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. I never ever would have thought that, we would ever have a Petite Corona as our number one selling cigar. I venture to say that we might be the only brand out there in the market that has a Petite Corona as their number one selling cigar. So,
1000%.
Which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I think, I talk to a lot of consumers, see a lot of people at events and things like that. And people just kind of get hung up on these ideas of what they think a cigar should be and the size. And all of these different criteria that they've read or seen somewhere, you know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
like, you just gotta let all that shit out the window, and it's just about the cigar. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what size it is. If it's a great cigar, it's a great cigar. And I think it's cool to see the Killer Bee, kind of prove that point.
Stop me if you've heard this before, right? I'm sure this has happened before. James, I love the Killer Bee. Have you ever thought about making it in a Toro, making it bigger?
All the time. I mean, the worst thing for me though is when people will actually refuse to try it because of the size, because it's too
Oh,
small. So that for me is always the frustrating thing. It's like I'm fine to talk about doing it different if people are already smoking it and liking it. But I mean, somebody that won't try it just because of the size, I just can't wrap my head around that.
I'm not a big Gordo guy, but I'll try him. I'll always try something, even if it's not something that I normally go to. The Coronas and Robustos are typically my jam for the most part. That's why I gravitate towards them and everything, which made me raise my eyebrows when you talked about how you're bringing the 5x50 to all your core. I'm stoked for that. That's exciting. Now I know this was always, like you said, it was part of your thing. You were gonna do what you wanted to regardless and everything. With these quote unquote aficionado sizes, right? Petite Coronas, Lonsdales, all these, I guess non-mainstream sizes and everything like that. Is it just how the blend worked out for you, or did it start with the size? Like, what was the order of creativity in that, and for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I like to, for me, when I blend a cigar, I like to stick to kind of like a 46 ring gauge. To me, that's kind of the ideal um, balance between filler wrapper ratio. So to me, that's like the truest representation of the blend, because that's what I blend towards, is that size. And then anything above or below that, obviously has to be kind of tweaked and reworked, because you're either gaining more wrapper flavor or losing it, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, for me personally, that's my go-to. I love that ring gauge. But yeah, it's hard for me not to put out Corona Gordos, Lonsdales, things like that. Like, it's just because that's really what I love to smoke. I mean, but some things just do better in different sizes as well. So it's just kind of like, we when I do cigars, I like to try it and that go-to size, and then I kind of play with it and other sizes as well. And sometimes it's like, what, man, in that 52 or whatever, that's really where it starts to shine. So, I just kind of let the tobacco do its thing and speak for itself.
I tried a Vitola of this recent morphine release, and I James, forgive me. It was I guess a petite box press torpedo is my descriptor of it. What do you call that Vitola? It seemed like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a box press torpedo robusto. Yeah.
yeah, that was really cool. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I liked it. Am I remiss? Like, is that the first time you've done that Vitola, or is it always, when you've done morphine, have you always had
It's
that offering?
No, it's only the second time that we've done it, and it's kind of funny because the first time we did it, I think, was 2015.
Oh, sure. Wait, it's been
And
a while.
yeah, and that particular size was my favorite, but it was a dog, man. Like, nobody wanted it. Like, all the other sizes were sold out, and I would just see that cigar on the shelf, and it's just like, do people really hate torpedoes that much?
The answer is yes,
Whatever the
James.
case. So yeah, it was just kind of funny that, and then, so even though it was like one of my favorite sizes that we've done in morphine, I kind of let it just sit on the shelf for a while. And then this last year, I was just like, whatever, man, I'm bringing it back. Like, I just love it. It's been too long. brought it back, and man, people were so stoked about that particular size. It was just great to see that, like, for whatever reason, over time, people had kind of remembered it, and I guess remembered liking it and hadn't seen it. And so, yeah, it was great to see people really get behind that particular Vitola this time around.
I mentioned the answer was yes, James. I'll tell you for a fact, I've come around to it more and more over the recent years, because people like yourself are actually making them and making them well. For a long time, it was a very popular Vitola. And I remember, like, there was always a torpedo release in XYZ release, right? And for a long time, people just didn't. I feel like they just didn't have. They didn't have the rollers, or they didn't have it down. They could make another Vitola just fine, or even beyond fine, like excellent. But when it came to torpedoes, I just flat out didn't like them. Like, they didn't perform as well. They didn't taste, consistent with the blend. And I get that it's supposed to be a different experience. I'm not that dense, but for a long time, it just felt like people just kind of mailed it in on that size. And slowly but surely, I think, like, again, I think you're a great example of this. Like, people who make it in, making it right, and know what they're doing now, which is great. Because and
I think it's kind of a, it's interesting, because the viewpoint, like my viewpoint, and I guess the viewpoint from any manufacturer, like, kind of looking at the way people respond to certain products, it's always really interesting. And I think kind of what we've seen over the last 10 years is that people have definitely are kind of evolving, and they're more educated now, than they've ever been about cigars. And that's really cool to see, because I remember when we first released the Deliverance Nocturnes, we did kind of those super weird figurados, the long Solomon, the short Solomon, the Perfecto. And I literally just saw people, like, look at that cigar and just, like, with a blank stare, they just didn't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like, so it's kind of funny because, I thought they were awesome. There was, a whole group of people that were super into them and loved them, but your average, like, mass consumer, just, they didn't know what to make of that particular cigar, so it's interesting. Anytime you even veer a little bit out of the box, Vitola wise, it's box pressed and a torpedo, like, that's cutting out a whole group of people right there. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I want to come back to an experience you said that you've been having, like, you've had about, like, going back to the Killer Bee for a second. I've worked events for a number of years, so I've witnessed the very thing you described about people who didn't want to try something for XYZ reason when they're told by the manufacturer. And it brings me back to when I worked more in retail and everything. And I remember that frustrating feeling, James. I got to be honest with you. So I'm with you 100%. I've never manufactured a cigar, so I don't want to say I felt the same way as you did, but I found it incredibly disrespectful and very arrogant of people. Like, hey, James, you make all these cigars. Like, which one should I try? You should try the Killer Bee. No, not going to do it. Like, and I witnessed that very thing so many times from various folks, and every time it used to just get under my skin. So I've witnessed it, so I understand that frustration. Let me just say, it always blows my mind. They're missing out. Because it's an amazing cigar. So, but
thank you.
Clearly enough people have gotten it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Just couple more questions and segments here, James, to wrap up our conversation tonight. Thank you so much for making some time to me tonight. Like you said, I know we talked about this earlier. You just got done traveling, and for you to sit down tonight for a couple hours and chit chat with me, I really do appreciate it. So thank you.
No, it's all good, man.
So
happy to be here.
This is a newer segment that we've had since the last time you were on, and I've been really excited to ask you this because I've not too much pressure here, but I feel like there's a story that you will probably bring. And this is, of course, our asylum moment. Refuge is more than just a physical place. It can be a state of mind. Some of life's greatest reflections can be found in our own personal asylum. Moments like these were made for asylum cigars. So light up an asylum and choose your refuge. Now, James, this segment is all about, cigars are very much community driven. We talked about experience in retailers and events, and it's very much community. You've got a wonderful fan base, very loyal. And so we smoke cigars together. That's typically what we do. We're doing it tonight, even though we're doing it virtually. And, but every so often we get to experience a cigar smoking experience just by ourselves. And it can be, celebrating something, maybe celebrating nothing. It can be complete silence, or maybe we're listening to some music or watching something or whatever, but it's us and the cigar. I'm sure you've had dozens of moments like this over your career and lifetime, but what's a moment that you recall? Could be any of them. I'm not going to ask you to pick your top one, but what's a moment that comes to mind when you think of, man, I remember smoking this cigar. I was alone. What cigar was it, and what was that moment about?
Yeah, that's kind of tough. I mean, I would say probably for me, just a little bit of not to go too far off the rails and into details, but a little bit of my backstory was, when we started Black Label, we were also still running our travel company throughout Central America, which, like you mentioned earlier, was, just taking a lot of Land Rovers into the jungles and these remote mine ruins, all this stuff, which was all very, very cool. But kind of the last phases of that, I was very focused on developing Black Label and really wanting to figure out how to make this work. So I remember I was on one of our expedition trips. I think it was our last one, but we were setting up in camp, and I would always get up super early in the morning because I had to, prep everything and all that. But I would always get up early enough to have a cigar before kind of everything kicked off. And I remember sitting on the hood of our Defender and smoking the cigar, and that was kind of the moment for me when I just said, you know what, this is it. Like, this is the last trip. Like, this is really what I want to do. And this is what I'm passionate about, what I want to put as my focus. And so that was kind of, one of those turning points where I knew that's Black Label was going to happen. And, that's everything else in the past was the end of it. So, that was kind of a very cool moment for me.
Do you remember what you smoked by chance?
Last rites. Yeah.
Nice. Do you ever miss it? The tours and going in the jungles with the Land Rover?
I miss the travel aspect of it. I mean, I've spent so many years of my adult life behind the steering wheel of a Land Rover in some part of the world, so I miss like the part where it was just Angela and I having those experiences. I don't miss the like tour aspect of it, with the groups of people and all of that. But I do miss like that experience of us being somewhere, in the middle of nowhere, in whatever part of the world, just kind of away from absolutely everything. So maybe someday we'll do another trip, but who knows?
I remember you talking about a similar moment last time we talked about it was maybe when you were driving in the desert or something like that. And just like the seclusion of it, you really enjoyed and stuff. Have you ever been back to Ghana?
We haven't. No, I mean, we've talked about it. We really wanted Parker to kind of see where he was born, where he came from. But yeah, it just hasn't really made the rotation yet. But I think at some point, I definitely want to take him back there.
it's an unfortunate part of the continent of Africa, how, things change at the drop of a hat. I don't even know if it's a safe place to travel, and I'm not trying to be insulting to it. If it's not, just the continent in itself is just always an
I
upheaval,
mean,
it seems like.
yeah, I mean, I haven't paid too much close attention to it over the last few years. I mean, I do know that, when we left, things were completely fine there. I did hear that they kind of went through a rough patch. This was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not sure where things stand today, but like you said, it is very volatile anywhere you go, and it's hard to say what's coming next.
Do you know if the resort that you guys started if it's still there?
I do think it is. Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I think they still have they at least have a social media page up. Last time I checked, it was probably like a year ago, which is kind of cool to see.
It kind of brings us to, and I'm not suggesting anything about Oveja Negra brands necessarily, but you've been an entrepreneur your entire life. Like you said, you've sold businesses and everything like that. And you mentioned just a second ago, you check the social media page and everything like that. Do you, I find it interesting just because, like, with the recent sale of, Alec Bradley, for example, behind me and everything, and when ownership changes hands and everything like that, like, do you, out of all the businesses that you've sold, like, is there anything that you still keep track of, or do you, like, once you and Angela were done, you were done and you were on to the next project?
I mean, I think you always stay curious. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things. I think that anytime you put the amount of time and effort into creating something and kind of building it up to the point where you can sell it, your hope is that it carries on. And that. So yeah, it's definitely something we're always curious about. We kind of check back on things every once in a while to see if they're still going or if they're still around and things like that. But it's all kind of pieces of your past. So, and I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing that it's kind of pieces of yourself. And the places we've been and the businesses we started they all kind of represent different phases of our life. So they definitely have kind of a personal thing to us.
I mean, never sold a business. I just find it, like you said, find it interesting. Like, you put your heart and soul into something, and then, like you said, it's a piece of you that, and looking back on it. But I know a lot of entrepreneurs that have done that too. They've sold a business and they don't really care to look back. They're just like, yeah, that's something I did. It was like, for people who've cashed a paycheck their entire working career, like myself, it's almost like the way I view a former job, almost. And
I mean, I think there's different like cycles for people, right? Like, a lot of people sell their business because they're done with it, right? They're tired of it. They want to do something else. For us, it was never really the case. We were just more kind of antsy and ready to move on to the next idea. You know what I mean? So it was never like, man, I gotta be done with this. I'm ready to move on, So for us, it was just always exciting to do the next project. That was kind of what drove us.
Coming back full circle about how Nicaragua's been home for longer than any place in your adult life. Was that strange for you to, like, this is my purpose. This is it. This is the thing.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, we're in the process of building a house now, and, like, so for us, it all still feels very strange. I mean, it's funny because people say, like, oh, well, you have this business, you're doing this, you're doing that. And, we still won't commit to like a 5-year plan, even though obviously we're here, we're doing this, we're not going anywhere. But yeah, it's just something, I don't know. Luckily, Angela and I found each other because, we're both in that kind of same state of mind where it's just like, I'll never admit that something is permanent. I always have to have that option of doing something else. But, even though we're not going anywhere or doing anything, but
once a nomad, always a nomad, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
That's cool. James, just a couple more questions here. Well, this one's actually our rapid fire segment, so there's actually a few questions in this, and then we'll conclude with our curveball segment, which you're familiar with from your last visit here. So this next section is called This or That, and it's supposed to be rapid fire. So I just give you, it's very simple. I give you a choice between two things, and you pick one. Might have a brief follow-up or two, but that's the name of the game here. So back to your wine connoisseur days, for people who don't realize that you were a sommelier. Merlot or Pinot Noir?
Pinot.
Okay, I know I said rapid fire. Why that was pretty snap. Why Pinot?
Well, not to get too geeky on it, but like you say, Merlot, you have to be, honestly, you got to be more specific. Are you talking like New World California Merlot, or are you talking like Bordeaux? So, because those are two very different worlds.
But Pinot Noir doesn't have that kind of distinction. Again, I'm speaking from
it definitely does, but I would just say that you have Burgundy in France, which is all predominantly Pinot Noir, which is definitely up here compared to, California Pinot Noir. But I will say that California Pinot Noir as well is definitely, I think, going to be a better, in my opinion, better than your basic California Merlot.
Okay. How do you feel about Oregon Pinot Noir?
Oregon, yes, I would say Oregon over California for sure. Yeah, Oregon just has its great climate for Pinot. It does really, really well.
I've always enjoyed Pinot Noir from like Yamhill Valley and stuff like that. So, all right. Yeah. Sticking with the theme here, wine Pinot Grigio versus Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Would you rather have, this is back going to tobacco now, would you rather have a better wrapper or a better binder?
I'll say wrapper.
Better filler or better binder?
Filler.
Interesting. Okay. These are getting a little bit more fun now. Sleeping with a fan on or without one on?
Fan, 100%.
This is what I was trying to explain. It's a guy thing. My wife still doesn't understand how the AC and the fan has to go on at the same time.
No, bro. If there's not a fan, I got the fan app on the phone just so it sounds like there's a fan. So yeah, fan all the way.
Absolutely. Speaking about regions, you were a second ago when we were talking about wine, not necessarily wine specific, just these two places, Italy or France?
France.
What about it?
I think that the variety that you get out of France is just, I mean, you got all the first growth Bordeaux houses, you have, the Burgundy region, you have Champagne, so just the variety, and literally amongst those variety of regions, you have, the best in the world of anything that they do there. So
nice.
I do love Italian wines, absolutely, 100%. But I don't think that when you look at the overall big picture, it's a comparison, really.
Yeah. I know we talked about this last time. Like Asia is like one of the places in the world that you really haven't spent much time or any time at all, relatively to other parts of your travels and stuff. But to visit, like a vacation, would you rather go to Japan or China?
Japan.
Anything specific about it, or?
I've always wanted to go to Japan. I actually, it's kind of funny, in college and in art school, I actually studied Japanese art history. So it's one of those places that I've always been fascinated about, and I'm really kind of frustrated that I haven't taken the time to actually get there yet. And kind of going back to the whole COVID thing, we actually booked our entire trip to Japan for Parker's 13th birthday. We were going to go, and that all obviously fell apart. We were supposed to go right as COVID kicked off. So yeah, it's definitely on the list. So just for me, it's the history, the culture of it is something I've always been fascinated about, and so I think China would be dope also. But if I had to pick, it would definitely be Japan.
Maybe his high
And
school
food.
graduation.
I mean, culinary aspect as well is like, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's funny. We were just we go to New York City, I guess, like seems like every 3 months now, just to eat and hang out. And this last trip was just like Japanese restaurant after Japanese restaurant after Japanese restaurant. So we're all really into the food as well.
Nice. You've been doing this all night, James. You're teeing me up perfectly. So to go back to your art days, being an art student and everything. So would you rather teach a class on art, or would you rather take an art class that you haven't taken before?
At this point in my life, I would say I'd probably rather teach it. Just kind of through my own experience of my son, who's, started being artistic pretty young and has kind of grown and developed through that, like seeing that and seeing his experience and watching him, learn different things and become interested and curious about different things when it comes to art. I think that's really cool. And, I like seeing, kids kind of open their eyes and open their minds to these types of new experiences when it comes to, creating something. So I would go with teach.
My sister is a registrar at the Whitney in New York. So speaking of New York and art, so she was an art. She has her master's in art history, and she worked at the Met for a while. She worked at the Dallas Museum of Art, a couple of other places around the country and stuff. And it's a question I came up with the other day, and I was like, it's something I'm going to ask my sister, because I think, like you, I would love to take an art class from you. I think that you would have so much to share, like combined with all your travel and everything, and your knowledge and experience. Like I think it would be really fascinating what you would have to offer or something. Have you ever, even though I just kind of posed the question, have you ever thought about maybe doing something at like a university level or something like that? Like, kind of dabbling in it?
No, I mean, I would think, like, for me, it would be way more small scale. Like, I think my son's school is a really good example. Obviously being in Nicaragua, and even though it's an international school, they don't have like a great art program. But I do think that it would be cool to get involved in that somehow. And, because I think that kind of that age group, at least for me, when I was growing up, was really kind of where, I started to see the world in a little bit of a different way through my experiences with art and things like that. So I think it would be kind of cool to kind of be on that level, kind of the, early teen years.
Nice. Again, this is a random one. Gummy worms or gummy bears?
Bears.
Okay. And then the last one, this one's a little deep. Would you rather foresee the future or change the past?
I don't know. That's tough, man. I guess I would say foresee the future only because I wouldn't want to change the past, because at least for me personally, it's what brought me to where I am now. So, and I'm very content with where that ended up being. So I wouldn't want to be able to go back and alter that in any way.
Would you? So I guess that kind of answers the question. Would you say you've lived a life of little or no regret in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, Angela and I both, we kind of live by the whole idea that, you only regret the things you never did. So I feel like anything you do, whether it be a success or failure or whatever, it kind of molds you into the person that you are. And I think you need both those things in your life to kind of show you, what to do and what not to do. So yeah, I mean, everything we've done, people have always thought we were nuts from the beginning, and we've always been all about taking the risk and going all in, and so yeah, definitely no regrets. I mean,
That's awesome. I think I asked a variation of this question last time, and I apologize, I don't recall the answer. Like, has anyone, because we explored your story pretty extensively last time, and it's one of the most fascinating stories that I've ever been. It was one of my favorite takes I've ever done, just because of how rich and just incredibly interesting, for lack of a better word, that your background has. Has anyone ever learned your story and asked, like, man, I want to do that? What do I do? Has anyone ever asked that of you?
I mean, I think people kind of say it all the time. You know what I mean? It's like people are like, "Oh, I want to do that." Like, I wish, or for me, the thing that bothers me the most is when people say, "I wish I could do that." You know what I mean? And it's like, well, you can. You just have to make the choice to do it. It may not be comfortable, but if you really want to do it, you could do it. And so yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's one of those things where I think we've been really successful in what we do because we are the type of people that don't look at risk the same way. You know what I mean? We're completely fine with packing our stuff and moving to whatever country and figuring it out. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's more a state of mind. It's not about whether you can physically actually do it. You just have to be in the state of mind that you're willing to, do what it takes and be comfortable with the risk factor or whatever it is.
Yes. All right. Well, we are on down to our last question of the evening, James. Again, thank you so much for all your time tonight. Great question, great conversation, like always. And this, of course, is our curveball segment, which is always brought to you by Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Fastballs or curveballs, it doesn't matter. Since the company's inception, Steve Sock has been knocking them out of the park 8 consecutive years in the consensus top 3. Congratulations to our good friend, Mr. Steve Saka. We talked a little bit about this along the way today, James. So with your each brand, Blackworks, Melio, Black Label, you've kind of established these themes that we've talked about. Which brand was the hardest theme to come up with?
I think it would definitely have to be Emilio. So, and the reason being is, Emilio wasn't kind of my idea, my inception. It's a brand that was around, and I'll preface it with saying that it is getting easier, but at the time that we took over Emilio and took over the branding, it was kind of that time where we had FDA looming over everything, and everybody was in fear that this ruling was going to come down where you weren't allowed to change the name, you weren't allowed to change the sizes, things like that. And so when we took it over, we were like, okay, well, this is the portfolio. We have to figure out how to make side 1, side 2, Suave, all of that cool. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, all right, well, we can't just come out with new stuff, which would be, a lot easier. We got to figure out how to like rework this and rebrand it and make it kind of fit our style and be something that people are going to respond to, and kind of forget that these cigars have already been around, with different branding and whatever. So, yeah, that was kind of the tough thing. And now that, that's kind of gone away a little bit, we have the more freedom to do kind of exactly what we want to do in terms of new products and new releases. And, so yeah, it's one of those things where, like I said, Emilio's been around for like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. And, because it's not something we developed from scratch, it's more so like trying to change it and get it to the point where it's kind of a standalone brand, which, like I said, it's just one of those projects that takes a little time, and I think we're getting there. But
Have you thought about inserting your love of and infatuation with hip hop into it somehow?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think, as we kind of go down this musical theme with Emilio, I think we'll see a little bit more of that. And I have some cool stuff lined up for the new stuff that's coming out, and it's definitely going to be a little bit more kind of in that hip hop genre in terms of the branding. So yeah, it's definitely coming.
I just have this thing in my, as much as I in the past, there are certainly exceptions to this rule, but celebrity cigars tend to not do well as a whole and in general. But I still have this this pipe dream one day that like you and Wu-Tang are going to get together and you're going to figure something out, like how to do something. That'd be so awesome. I just think it'd be really cool.
It would be
awesome. Did you, I know it's been a few years since he was part of the brand and everything. I mean, did you have a relationship with Gary Griffith at all? Did you know him at all?
No, I've met Gary only once. But kind of when we were coming into the whole, I think it was Boutiques Unified at that time or whatever. Gary had already kind of been taken out of the picture.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Just didn't know. Yeah, he was a stable for a long time. So I was so crazy when he left. It was unbelievable. It was like one of those like just surprises. It was like, what? But I'm really glad it's landed back in your lap and in this way. And I love that what you guys are like, the identity that you guys are creating with it. It's like you said, it's going to take some time, I think, but I think it's going to be another powerhouse for you, and you're going to have that 3-pronged window. I mean, any thought to any other lanes, to use the metaphor, I guess?
I mean, yeah, it's always I always have something on the back burner. So yeah, I mean, kind of as the business grows, as we get bigger, I definitely, my mind kind of steers towards like new kind of branch off brand ideas, different line ideas. So, yeah, I mean, probably not within the next couple of years, but it is definitely something I'm looking at a little bit further down the road, developing something new to kind of come into the group. So we'll see.
Well, terrific. Well, I know I've thanked you a few times already, James, but it's really meant quite a bit to me for you to sit down for some time again tonight and have another great conversation. I've really come to enjoy our interactions and our conversations. I feel like I learn a lot from everybody. So I won't say, anything obtuse or necessarily, but I just really enjoy your refreshing perspective on things. It's just something that I've always come to enjoy about our interactions, and it's something I always look forward to. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, for everyone out there, thank you for staying up late with us as always. We've got speaking of milestones, James's 10th anniversary project, Madonna Negra, that's coming out later this summer. So check that out. That's going to be exciting. We do have our 250th take coming here in a couple weeks. We're going to be having a fantastic guest that I know everyone will be excited about. So we've got some great things on the horizon for us as well. So stay tuned for details on that. If you check out our YouTube channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. You can always hit the like button on our Facebook page, ELOSOFUMAR. And if you're listening to wherever you listen to podcasts later on, whether that be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Podbean, or iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure you download, subscribe, and review. If you already are a subscriber, do me a favor, hit unsubscribe, but don't forget to hit resubscribe, because that really helps my numbers and allows me to get great guests like James whenever I want. So do that, please. For everyone out there, thank you so much for spending. This was our 249th take live from the Alec Bradley Lone Star studio of Azle, Texas. I'm Bear Duplessis. He's James Brown. Guess what, everybody? We'll see you next time.